So in the top, all you're doing is the same as what you should have been doing before. This number times this number and put it in the top, the middle number in the bottom. Before we had 1 here, but we don't this time, so it actually changes something. And then you can write your guesses. I can't say this enough. I like write these down, and I'm going to show you on a more difficult problem in the next example. But right here, maybe you see right away, like 1 times 15 would work. Yes?
Did you do 15 because you multiplied 3 and 5?
Yes, you're always doing, that's what I was trying to say before. I think the first time we had the notes, it was A times C in the top. It's just before it was a 1, so it looked like we were only taking the last number.
Okay.
But we were actually multiplying the first number times the last, as long as it's in standard form, and then bring down the middle number. So my first guess is 1 and 15. And that will actually work out. Yeah, it's got to be a -1, right? Because if we add these together, that would be 16. And if we multiply them, we get a -15. Whereas before, we would only get a +15. So, here's the new part. Everything else is the same so far, as long as you're multiplying this times this. The new part, since this is not just 1, you're going to divide by this number and an x, divide by this number and an x. So this is the way that we're going to write it. We're going to try and reduce at this stage. So try to reduce. So this doesn't change at all. We can't reduce. So this one's going to change, or it's going to become 3x minus 1. Can you guys see that? There. So I'm trying to reduce this too. Try to reduce, but I can't. So I'm just doing bottom and then the top. 3x minus 1. On this one, it does reduce. I can divide by what? Yeah, by, oh no, by 3, right? So divide by 3, and then I get 5 over x. So what do you think goes here? This would be x, and it's a positive 5, so plus 5. That is going to be our answer. Yeah, the only thing that's different is you have to remember to put this in on the bottom and then reduce the fractions. Then it's almost the same exact thing. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
If I were to multiply this out, I would get back to this. I kind of want to show that, but I'll show that at the end after I pass out the assignment, so you can see that if you want to. Let's look at a more difficult problem. Let's see, example 2. We're going to have same instructions, factor completely. And this time we'll have 24x squared plus 37x minus 5. So on this, again, try and divide by a GCF, but nothing goes into all 3 of these. Right? We can't divide by 5, so we can't divide a GCF here. I should have turned the light on the camera. Oh well. So then I'll go straight to my x. 24 times 5, what is that? 120. And it'll be negative. So this times this in the top, and then the bottom number is 37. This is what I'm talking about in terms of writing down the guesses. Because my first guess Well, what do you think? What would be your first guess? So my first guess would be 12 and 10. And that would make 120, but that doesn't work. I'll write that down. I'm trying to show my thought process. 12 and 10. If I multiply 12 and 10, I get 120. One of them will have to be negative. But if I add these, I get 22. Or if I subtract them, I get 2 or negative 2, something like that. So that doesn't work out. If my first guess doesn't work out, I just start writing down, okay, 1 and 120, that's not going to work. 2 and 60, 2 and 60, that also doesn't work. And then 3, what's 120 divided by 3? That's 40. That one will work. If I subtracted 40 minus 3, that's 37. And then I'll figure out the negatives. Yeah, the 3 has to be negative because negative times a positive is a negative. And when I add those, the smaller one has to be negative so that this is a positive. And then what's the next thing that I have to do because it's not the shortcut method?
Divide by 24x.
Divide by 24x on both of them. And so we're going to reduce. I can divide this one by 3. So yeah, you got to take your time and be careful on this and try and figure out what you can reduce by. So this would be negative 1 over 8x. Reduce this one by what? I don't know. If you get it, like if you can still reduce after you reduce the first time, just keep going until you can't reduce anymore. That's the idea here. So what can you divide by? 4? 8? Oh, you can divide by 8. If you divide it by 4, then in the next step, divide by 2, and then you'll be done. So either way. Divide by 8, what is that? 5 over 3x. So then my answer, 8x minus 1 times 3x plus 5. Do you guys remember how to multiply this out? If you, I won't do it, but to check, the way that we were looking at it was maybe do the box method. I think a lot of people, or some people, preferred the box method. And 3x and a positive 5. And fill it in, combine like terms, and then you should get back to this. So this is to check. If you wanted to check, you could do that. Or FOIL, yeah, or just like this times 2 of them. That one is less writing. But either way, if you wanted to check, you'd multiply it and you would get this if you did it right. Any questions on this?